You know what really grinds my gears? Players who have to showcase their quote-unquote development through workouts over the summer to the masses. But you know what's the worst? When it's done by underwhelming Knicks players who fail to showcase most to any of those newfound or improved skills during the regular season. Dogs, we get it. Gotta build your brand, get your image up, get those DMs. I mean, sure, whatever. But if you're a perennial loser, we're the ones left thinking, what were you doing in those workouts? What did they actually learn? And most importantly, why do they need to post it on social media? In today's video, we'll break down several Knicks players with regards to their social media workouts and the subsequent performances on the court. To validate my aggravation, I'll provide some videos, some stupid sound effects, and some stats mixed with context. And hopefully, by the end of the video, you'll see the stupidity I see regarding Knicks players and the need to showcase their workouts on social media. Before we get started, hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, follow the channel on Twitter, and to all, welcome to the Legion of Knicks podcast. Salute to MBK and follow Simeon Russell if you hadn't. Hit that rock. You ever see NBA players that look like mythical titans and gods in summer workouts, showing off their new crossover skills against air, spin moves against chairs, and clutch shots against their trainers, only to look mad generic and unchanged when they return to normal NBA action? It frustrates me too. I remember the good old days of legendary stories where the top stars traveled and played against each other one-on-one or with some other homies on the team in another guy's hometown during the summer. But the information was only spread by word of mouth as social media was non-existent, so they kind of hyped it up and there was this folklore attached to it. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of value that goes into the entertainment side of the various leagues and even the workouts they provide where the normal everyday guy or gal can go and replicate them on their own. So I'm not hating on it from a broad standpoint. But to me, it just seems like a lot of the validation comes from likes or check marks on social media, DMs, all this fanfare that's kind of empty versus the true validation, which should come in the form of a ring. What's worse is that certain Knicks players have fallen into this trap where they feel the need to showcase their newest triple carry crossover or over-traveled step-back fadeaway three-pointer despite many other fundamental flaws in their game that could be more easily tackled and that could ultimately manifest into more effective team play and ultimately more wins. And there are three culprits that come to mind on this team: Julius Randle, Dennis Smith Jr., and Frank Nitti, all with varying degrees of success and failure in implementing these moves into regular season play, and honestly dubious positions with this team given the new direction that Leon Rose may want to take. And you know who I blame it on? This guy, Carmelo Anthony, and his infamous hoodie Melo phase. This version of Melo truly convinced fans and incompetent front offices that Melo's decline and outdated style of basketball was just a facade, manifested by the stupidity of the Knicks front office. That Melo still had a lot in the tank, that he still held a deadly mid-range and post-up, or that unstoppable pull-up from deep on fast breaks. When in all actuality, the hoodie Melo vibes just reaffirm the notion that front office can be just as desperate or incompetent as fans. The rough and rugged ISO post-up game of the 1990s into the late 2000s was all but gone, and Melo never truly adapted to the faster-paced, small ball era of today. Nor did he ever utilize his talents to be a plus defender who could offset his lack of natural speed and quickness. And that degradation showed. In OKC, for the 1 year that he was there, Mr. Coming off the bench, he put up 16.2 points on 40.4% shooting from the field, 35.7% from three, 5.8 rebounds a game, 1.3 assists. Stats that were all lower than his last year in New York. Melo went on to the Rockets, where he was released after 10 games, and then went on to ESPN to give excuses. Provide sob stories. Give his explanation as to why he was in his current position without a team. Ultimately, it led to him finally getting onto the Blazers as a decent stretch four, averaging 32.5 minutes a night, 15.3 points a game, off of 42.6% shooting from the field and 37.1% from three. You would think the IG dupe of Hoodie Melo would direct the young Sahabs of the NBA from following suit. But nah, if I can trick people into thinking I'm still elite and get a player on 2K, I'm about it. Let's start with Julius Randle, New York's big acquisition during the summer of 2019 after missing out on Kyrie and KD. This is a guy who's always produced on an individual level, but never really blossomed into a two-way impact player or dominant front court general. So when you see him videotaping fadeaways and post-up plays in the gym, you'd expect him to bridge the gap to be some type of post-up magnifico like Embiid or Jokic. So what did he give the Knicks? Turnover after turnover after turnover after turnover after turnover after turnover after bad play after mean mug after turnover. Yes, on the surface, the individual stats were there at 19.5 points a game on 46% from the field, 9.7 rebounds, 3.1 assists. But outside of the rebounds, these stats were worse than in 2018 with the Pelicans. And in 2019, his three-point shooting dipped from 34% to 27%. And the turnovers were slightly higher at 3 turnovers a game versus 2.8 in the previous year. And I'm surprised that wasn't a lot worse. And look at his stats in isolation and post-up plays on a year-over-year comparison. Not much of an improvement with post-up plays, while isolation plays generated less effectiveness and efficiency. Maybe it's time to 1. Stop ignoring my son RJ on the court, watch your game film, and break down why your flaws like over-dribbling, awful decision-making, lack of body balance and control, and inconsistent defense always leaves you on a team where you're under 500 and you're looking around as to why your individual stats might look good, but the overall team success is lacking. On to Dennis Smith Jr., the guy that everyone praised in hindsight once we realized that Frank Nitti wasn't Rod Strickland or Russell Westbrook. And when we got him, many in Knickland rejoiced. Now, I'm not going to judge Dennis Smith Jr. too harshly when he first came over. This is a guy who received poor development with the Mavericks and Rick Carlisle and had to make way for the second coming of Harden and Luka Doncic, the guy who can't shoot threes or play defense, high usage rate. Don't get me wrong, look, Luka Doncic is very, very talented, but people making this guy out to be like some type of European savior of basketball. But back into Dennis Smith Jr. When videos of his workouts went viral on social media, showcasing a slightly better form in his jump shot, and a revelation of his talks with Chris Paul, you felt as if his mental prime was beginning to match up with his physical prowess. However, that was far from the case. Now, I'll give him some slack for the fact that he suffered a really bad back injury and his stepmother died, rest in peace, which is something no one can easily get over and maybe never properly cope with. So I commend him on his fortitude and strength in returning to the game. However, we still gotta judge him for what we saw on the court, and it was not pretty. I cannot absolve him of his inability to incorporate what we thought he learned and developed over the summer, especially the Chris Paul aspect. A man who relies heavily on court awareness, defender missteps, being able to read who has a hot hand on offense, and setting up high percentage field goals that can be achieved from his facilitation, and scanning of a weakness in the defense at a given moment. And lastly, knowing when and where to pull the trigger. And this is contrary to what we saw from Dennis Smith Jr. during the season, a guy who still relied heavily on his athleticism and explosiveness to get past defenders and to make plays. His production was a drop-off from last year and his rookie year. And although it's unfair to directly compare DSJ's stats to CP3, stats like assist to turnover ratio, which can speak to better ball control, assist ratio, a team's percentage of possessions that result in assists, a team turnover percentage, which shows improvement with greater development as a point guard, and on the flip, as a scorer, the statistics didn't improve either. So, what did he really learn from CP3, and what did he learn from those summer sessions? There were too many times last season where I saw DSJ unable to make that slick slip pass to Mitchell Robinson after Mitchell Robinson set a pick in the pick and roll set. And DSJ's ability to play off the ball, pretty poor to non-existent. From the 2-point field goal range, he took 0 shots from the catch and shoot. And from the 3-point line, he only shot 27.8% for the 2019-2020 season. And DSJ is not a plus defender, so at the very least, you're not going to find a player who's going to be able to neutralize the opposition's play at the point guard level, even if his offensive production is not up to par. At 6'2", 205 pounds, DSJ will have to find a way to tap into his mental capabilities such as court awareness, reading the defenses, and setting up the offenses, as well as better off-ball shooting in order to offset his natural physical limitations. There have been many high-flying dunking prodigies who've come to the NBA, and many of them have fizzled. So we need DSJ to be more like Chris Paul or Andre Miller, who weren't the most athletically gifted, but used their mental acuity and their guile, deception, and their finesse skills to make their offenses a lot more potent. Now, people might kill me for this, but the only guy who actually seemed to be trying to incorporate what he was developing in his social media summer workout videos was Frank Nitti. The biggest issue with Frank Ntilikina was if he'd ever be able to marry his international game style, which is more off-ball movement, a little bit more finesse, to the more physical, high-impact play of the NBA. Ultimately, his overall production was still fairly poor. But if you look at his shot type selection and the attempts, there was an increase in certain types of shots that might reveal a greater aggression on Frank Ntilikina's part, such as dunks and overall jump shots. And if you look at his scoring percentages based on distance of defender, he exhibited an improved ability to hit shots when he's wide open. However, the calculated necessary aggression and ability or willingness to attack the basket against a defender right in front of his face was still lacking when you look at his scoring stats based on distance of defender. The closer the defender got, the lower the number of attempts and the worse the efficiency became in certain areas, such as 2-point field goal percentage and total field goal percentage when the defender was 2 to 4 feet away. It would be helpful if Frank turned off the Instagram and the Twitter and worked more on skills that could hide his lack of elite speed and quickness, and work on ways to utilize his length and court awareness, such as his post-up game, which he has shown to have on certain occasions. Maybe tell your trainers to stop using your workouts as a marketing ad for their businesses, if they're doing so. Now, I'm not trying to hate on anybody's hustle, but think about it. If you're the trainer for a guy like Frank Ntilikina who's struggling to find his way in the NBA on a bad team like the Knicks, do you really want to market that product out to potential users or consumers? I mean, Julius Randle's trainer, do you want to be the guys who taught Julius Randle how to spin and pirouette into traffic 30 times and lose the ball? Maybe a guy like Frank Ntilikina, who may not have the elite speed or burst or explosion like a Russell Westbrook, but can utilize his length and his height, should watch film on guys like Sam Cassell, one of the more underrated point guards of the 90s into 2000s, Mark Jackson, a post-up magnifico who could facilitate and score from that position, Sean Livingston, who had that devastating injury but became a post-up beast for the Nets and the Golden State Warriors, Chris Paul, I mean, what more can I say about the guy? Jason Kidd, who made posting up from the point guard position fashionable, Andre Miller, one of the most underrated point guards of the 2000s, and big game Chauncey Billups, the general of that Pistons team that beat the Lakers, one of my favorite teams of all time. A guy who did develop a pretty dominant post-up game to win a championship and posted the workout videos or released them to the public with one of the greatest, if not the most naturally skilled center of all time in Hakeem Olajuwon, and that would be LeBron Shannon Sharp James, a guy who's not my favorite player and not in my top 5, but a first ballot Hall of Famer and one of the most dominant players in the 2000s and the 2010s. This is a man who got dominated by the likes of Jason Terry, Shawn Marion, my son, a 38-year-old Jason Kidd, and Gary Payton gloved by J.J. Barea. J.J. Barea. This is a man who teamed up with Flash and Chris Bosh, and they're supposed to win 7 championships, and you got defended well by J.J. Barea? Yikes. Wow. I mean, J.J. Barea. No offense, but J.J. Barea. This self-proclaimed GOAT went on to lose to those 2011-2012 Mavericks. But to LeBron James' credit, he went back to the lab. He worked with one of the greatest centers of all time in Hakeem Olajuwon, and he enhanced his post-up game to have set his preferred top-of-the-key basket slash. As you can see, LeBron James' utilization of the post-up shot went up in the 2012-2013 season, and his points in the restricted area also went up. Despite his regular season points per game dipping to 26.8 from 27.1 from the year before, his overall field goal percentage went up to 56.5 from 53.1%, and his 2-point percentage went up to 60.2% from 55.6%. These stats collectively help to convey that LeBron James actually took what Olajuwon taught him during the summer and wasn't just posting the videos on social media for likes and virtual attention, although LeBron James is an attention fiend. But I still gotta give LeBron James credit. All that hard work and dedication to adding a new wrinkle to his game led to another regular season MVP and an ultra-dominant performance in the finals, beating the dog spit out of the fledgling but uber-talented Oklahoma City Thunder in 2012-2013. Now back to Mitch Robinson, one of New York's core pieces to their young foundation. Actually, it's really just him and my son RJ Barrett. But nonetheless, he has fallen into the social media trap, where now he looks like God Sham God mixed with Kevin Durant against Equinox pickup level players. Shout out to the Equinox at Lincoln Square. It's nice to shoot launches from the top of the key after crossing over your friend on the court, but 56.8% from the line probably means you should focus on your form and technique, given how much you're in the prime position to get fouled in the restricted area during the regular season. Durant from the wing, watch Tim Duncan and learn how to triple threat and post up from the block and develop proper back to the basket moves that give you the option to shoot a mid-range or make a layup depending on how off balance you catch a defender. Look, I got love for all these Knicks players, so the tone in which I say some of these things are just in jest. But I'm a man who values self-validation over showing off. This social media video phenomena is like gambling. You put money on a bet hoping an outcome turns out a certain way. Now look, if these players come back next season a lot better and the team is winning, it looks like it paid off. The bet is successful and the videos had some effect. They look good in retrospect. However, if they come back sucking and just being bums, or at the very least not incrementally better than the previous season, people will question what were they doing in the summer. They will question their focus and their seriousness with regards to improvement. Even if those social media videos don't tell the whole story for a lack of improvement, the mainstream media will bash them. Everyone will wonder, especially on those same beloved social media sites where everybody was giving you likes and virtual hugs, whether right or wrong, if these guys are good enough for the Knicks, and maybe even for the NBA.